I found out that my husband has a secret child with his mistress. My life is ruined. I always thought I knew my husband. We had been together for nearly 10 years, 5 of them married. I trusted him completely. Naive, perhaps. I believed our morning conversations, shared dinners, and endless plans for the future were the foundation of a real, enduring love. But it was all an illusion shattered in a single evening, like a crystal glass slipping from my hands. It happened on a Monday. I came home earlier than usual, an unexpected day off from work. The house was quiet. At first, I welcomed the chance to enjoy the silence, but then I noticed something odd. His phone was on the kitchen table, the screen lit up. I know it was foolish, but I couldn't resist glancing at the notification. A message from an app I'd never seen before, from a woman with an unfamiliar name. The text was short but devastatingly clear. The little one missed you so much today. I tried to hold back, but I can't stay silent. At first, I thought it might be a message from a niece or a casual conversation, but a sinking feeling in my gut told me it was more. I unlocked the phone, and what followed was unimaginable. The messages formed a chain, and they were far from friendly. Dates, photos of a small child with his eyes, with the same smile I once thought was reserved just for us. I could barely breathe. My mind refused to accept reality. No, this is a mistake. It's impossible, I whispered to myself, but each new photo dismantled that hope. My husband, my partner, the man I shared every moment of my life with, had a child with another woman, and I had no idea. I sank to the kitchen floor, clutching the phone as if it were both the source of my shock and the only thread to the truth. I didn't know what to do. My heart pounded so loudly I thought the neighbors could hear it. Tears streamed down my face. Everything I thought I knew about our life had turned into a lie in an instant. Then I heard footsteps. He was coming home from work. I quickly put the phone back and tried to pull myself together. His face bore the usual smile, no hint of trouble. We exchanged our usual greetings. "Hey, how was your day?" "All good, you?" I wanted to scream, to demand answers about the child, but I stayed silent. For now. That evening, I returned to the phone. Each new message confirmed my worst fears. I began searching for evidence, dates, photos, gifts, secret meetings. Everything pointed to this going on for years, and I hadn't suspected a thing. With every minute, my world crumbled further. I tried to recall signs I might have missed. Late-night calls when he'd disappear for an hour or two, odd smiles while texting, trips he was vague about. I started to see it was all part of a carefully constructed mask. And now, the mask had fallen. By morning, I couldn't sleep. My mind was flooded with thoughts of betrayal, lies, and a child I never knew existed. I felt utterly betrayed. My trust was shattered. My future was in question, and I realized one terrible truth. I would have to face this truth head-on. But I didn't know how. How do you ask without fear? How do you hear a confession you're terrified to receive? In that moment, holding a cold cup of coffee and unable to let go of the phone, I understood. My life would never be the same. The next day, I could barely focus at work. Every movement was shadowed by thoughts of what I'd seen on his phone. I tried to convince myself it was a mistake, that I'd misunderstood. But my intuition, which had never failed me, said otherwise. I went home and picked up his phone again, this time with purpose. I searched for evidence to confirm my worst suspicions. Each message, each photo, each date was a shard of truth, piecing together a puzzle of betrayal. The first thing I noticed was a pattern. Messages always came late at night, when I was asleep. Those random calls he answered quietly when I entered the room now took on a sinister meaning. He'd been hiding this for so long, and I'd never noticed. I started checking social media. His friends' profiles, photos from parties, cafe meetups, and soon I found what I feared most. A photo of him with a small child, smiling, holding them in his arms. The child was his spitting image. Same eyes, same smile, same nose. I was choking on a mix of horror and anger. I tried to recall signs I might have overlooked. Late-night trips, vague excuses, gifts for colleagues. It all now seemed like a carefully crafted disguise. The more I dug, the more I found. Birthday gifts never mentioned, receipts in his name, odd weekend trips. Each discovery deepened the betrayal. My hands shook as I held the phone. I was terrified that if he walked in, I wouldn't be able to hide my emotions. But I needed the truth. I had to gather every piece of evidence to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. I decided to talk to his friends. It was risky. If someone tipped him off, the consequences would be unpredictable. But I needed an outside perspective to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. My first conversation was with a colleague he often lunched with. I pretended to ask about work, gradually steering toward personal matters. He was cautious, but eventually admitted he'd seen my husband with a young child a few times. He didn't want to interfere because he knew it was a secret. That hit me like a jolt of electricity. Now I had external confirmation. I wasn't crazy. He was hiding a child. Next, I tried to trace the woman I suspected he was involved with. It was harder. The name in the phone was short, no last name, but I found her social media profile through mutual friends. There, I saw photos of her with the same child. Each image screamed at me, "This isn't a fantasy, this is real." I began documenting everything: screenshots of messages, dates, photos, profile links. Each piece of evidence intensified the pain, but also gave me a sense of control. I now had the foundation for the conversation that had to happen. But the deeper I dug, the more questions arose. Why had he hidden this child for so long? Why didn't he tell me when we were planning our future? And the most terrifying question, who was this child to him? Did he love them as he loved me, or was it just an obligation? I knew I'd soon have to face the truth. But as I pieced together the puzzle, I felt like both a detective and a victim. I tried to understand his motives, gather evidence, and anticipate his reaction. One evening, a message broke me completely. It was from the woman. "He promised you'd never find out, but I can't stay silent anymore. The baby needs his father." I realized everything had spiraled out of control. The secret he'd so carefully guarded was now exposed. I felt the ground slip from under me. I dreaded the confrontation, but I knew delaying it would only deepen the pain. So I decided, tomorrow I'd ask him directly. No tricks, no excuses. I needed to know everything, and I prepared myself, gathering evidence and steeling my resolve. That night was the longest of my life. I lay in the dark, listening to my own breathing, trying to brace myself for what would come. I knew one simple truth. After this conversation, our life would never be the same. The morning after I gathered all the evidence was heavy. My body felt reluctant to move, every action a struggle. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, its taste as empty as my heart. My thoughts circled one goal, the conversation with him. When he walked in, his face was as ordinary as ever, no trace of worry. He had no idea I knew. And that scared me, not just the prospect of learning the truth, but seeing his reaction, his attempt to hide what could no longer be hidden. I started calmly but firmly. "We need to talk." He raised his eyebrows, surprised. "About what?" I paused to gather my strength, then exhaled. I know about the child." Shock flickered across his face, then despair. He tried to smile as if to turn it into a joke, but the smile was forced, unfamiliar. I pressed on. "I saw the messages, I saw the photos, and I want you to tell me the truth, all of it." He sat across from me, his face pale, hands trembling. He knew the deception was exposed. He took a deep breath and said words I'll never forget. "Okay, everything you saw, it's true. I have a child. And I should have told you, I just didn't know how." I stared at him, my heart torn apart by pain, anger, and betrayal all at once. His words cut like a knife, but I couldn't stop. "Didn't know how? You hid this for years. Every holiday, every birthday, every moment, a lie." He looked down. I was afraid of losing you. I was afraid if you found out, you'd leave. Tears welled up, but instead of crying, I held myself together. I needed to understand why he did this. Who is she? I asked quietly but firmly. It's complicated, he hesitated. We weren't together long, but I feel responsible for the child, and I love him. Each word sliced through me. Love for the child. Yes, that's one thing, but why didn't he tell me? Why was this secret more important than our life, our trust? You love him, but not me. My voice trembled. I love you, he said softly, but I didn't want to ruin our life. I wanted to protect us both. Protect us with his secret. I wanted to scream, to tear his words apart, but inside I felt emptiness. The betrayal mingled with a harsh reality. I could no longer trust the person I'd shared every moment of my life with. We sat in silence for several minutes, each lost in thought. I tried to find words, but they wouldn't come. My hands gripped the cup so tightly it creaked. I asked the most important question. Why should I stay in this marriage when you've built an entire life behind my back? He was silent. His eyes glistened with tears, but he couldn't give me an answer that would comfort me. And then I realized a terrible truth. There was no resolution. His secret had destroyed our life. I recalled every moment I doubted him, every odd excuse, every late-night call. It all made sense now. The realization that I'd been deceived for years gripped my heart like a vice. I need time to think, I said quietly but firmly. I don't know if I can ever forgive this. He nodded, not arguing. I stood and went to the bedroom, leaving him in the kitchen. My heart pounded so hard it felt like the whole house could hear it. I locked the door and for the first time in days, let myself cry. Tears flowed like a river, washing away the remnants of my illusion. I knew our marriage would never be the same. The betrayal was so deep that the trust we'd built over years was gone forever. In that moment, I understood. Tough decisions lay ahead. I could stay, try to forgive, try to salvage our family despite the lies. Or I could leave, preserving myself and my dignity. But one thing was clear. My heart no longer belonged to him entirely. It belonged to me, and that realization gave me a tiny spark of strength in the darkness. I decided that tomorrow I'd start making a plan to navigate this catastrophe and perhaps come out stronger. The days following his confession were the hardest of my life. I moved through the house like a ghost, every action a struggle, every word painful. At first, I tried talking to him, seeking motives, some shred of justification to hold on to. But answers didn't come. His words about loving the child and fearing losing me only deepened my pain. I realized a harsh truth. Trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. His secret had shattered the foundation of our family. Every corner of our home now reminded me of the lie, of the double life he'd led behind these walls. I started thinking about myself, my future, my mental health, what I deserved, honesty, respect, peace. And then it hit me. No matter how many years we'd spent together, this marriage could never be the same. I spoke with close friends, trusted confidants who supported me. Each conversation strengthened me. They asked the hard questions I was too afraid to ask myself. Can you live with this knowledge, with this betrayal? Could you forgive? My thoughts kept returning to the child. I wasn't ready to hate them. They weren't to blame for existing, and I could see my husband's sense of parental responsibility. But I also understood that the child was part of his hidden life, and now I was entangled in someone else's drama. I decided I needed space before making a choice. For days, I reflected, analyzing every moment of our marriage, every smile, every gesture of love. I tried to determine if forgiveness was possible or if leaving was the way to preserve my dignity. In that moment, I realized the core truth. Love without trust is impossible. Even if I stayed, part of me would always be suspicious, watching, checking. That wasn't a life, it was a prison of someone else's secrets. I decided to leave. It was a decision filled with pain but also strength. I began planning my steps, where I'd live, how I'd tell my family, how I'd handle the financial and legal aspects. Each choice was a small brick in the foundation of a new life. When I told my husband, he was stunned. He begged, explained, promised to fix everything. But I knew words could no longer restore trust. My eyes were no longer swayed by pretty phrases. "I loved you," I said, "but love without trust isn't a life. I want to be honest with myself and the child. I can't stay in this marriage." He bowed his head, words caught in his throat. I left the house with a sense of immense emptiness and, at the same time, freedom. The first step was the hardest, but I knew it was the start of a new life where I'd be in control of my feelings and decisions. Weeks passed. I rented an apartment, rebuilt my routine, and threw myself into work and hobbies I'd once set aside for the marriage. The pain lingered, but it was slowly transforming into strength. Every day I reminded myself, I deserve honesty and respect. Sometimes I see photos of his child on social media. My heart aches, but I understand it's not betrayal. It's a life unfolding separately from mine. I've learned to separate love for the child from my husband's betrayal. Here's what I've come to understand. Sometimes loving means letting go, loving yourself and your life. Not every marriage survives betrayal, and not every person can forgive a secret that destroys the foundation of trust. I made a choice that preserved my integrity. Looking back, I see lessons. I've learned to trust my intuition, to trust myself, and to face difficult decisions without fear. My life has changed forever, but I feel strength within me again. The pain was brutal, but it led me to a realization. I can be happy even if my path no longer includes him. I leave this here for anyone who's faced betrayal. Sometimes, the bravest step isn't to forgive, but to walk away and protect your heart.